Following its investigation, the NFL has fined the Washington football team $10 million for what it's calling, quote, a highly unprofessional workplace, saying the organization subjected employees, specifically women, to sexual harassment and intimidation. The league also said owner Dan Snyder will take a lesser role with the team. The league, though, now facing backlash for not coming down harder on the organization. Here's Adam Schefter.
It is one of the stiffest fines that the NFL ever has handed down, and it is appropriate. But at the same time, there were no suspensions. There were no loss of draft picks. And this is for a case in which there were no legal charges against anybody in the Washington organization. But a law firm in Washington interviewed over 150 current and former employees, and they found an organization that sounded like it was run out of a cesspool, where there was harassment, where there was intimidation, where there was bullying, where there was women who did not feel safe in that particular work environment. And so the league handed down a figure that certainly sounds stiff, but in a way, it's not very much, considering the fact that there were no suspensions and there were no loss of draft picks in this particular case.
Did the NFL come down hard enough on Washington?
You know, I don't think so, Charlie. I think when you look at it, it's money. It's $10 million. You look at that number. That's a small, that's nothing to an NFL owner, an NFL team. And if you know how things work, they can write that down. So it's not even $10 million because they're going to write it down in their tax returns, whatever they do from a corporate standpoint. A charitable contribution, all of those. So that number is even smaller. And then when you think about it, you say to yourself, early on, and I know it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as Daniel Snyder or Donald Sterling and Daniel Snyder with the LA Clippers. It's the NFL and the NBA. But what the NFL didn't do, what the NBA did early on, is they wind up saying to themselves, it's bad for our league. It's bad for our logo. It's not right. They told him, you got to sell the team. And I feel like with everything that has gone on with the Washington football team from day one, not just this, but from the naming rights situation to now the harassment situation and all the lawsuits and the problems with the owners that was his partners and the minority side, all of those sort of things, I think the league should have stepped in a long time ago and said to themselves, you know what? This is bad for our business as a whole. You are one of the marquee franchises in the National Football League, and we are getting a black eye because of the behavior in your organization. I have 2 daughters, okay? And I know how important it is to respect women and not do certain things. So $10 million, yeah, you could have took some draft picks because it's going to hurt long-term success. If you decide to deplete them of draft picks, they won't be able to draft guys to be successful. But is it really about that? Or is it really about changing the real culture and environment and what your organization is? Yeah, hiring Jason Wright is great. That was wonderful. I loved it. And he's got a lot of control to fix things over there. But was that the only thing that you could have done? And I don't think so. But that's just me.
Keyshawn, I'm 100% with you. Here's something else. Daniel Snyder's worth $2.6 billion. They essentially took 0.003% away from him with $10 million. To use a line from Coming to America, that's pocket money, Akeem, when it comes to Daniel Snyder. That's what it comes down to. The average household in this country is $50,000. That's equivalent to $192 of having your car impounded. That's the kind of fine that the NFL levied on Dan Snyder. Of course, it's not going to mean anything to a guy like Dan Snyder because, once again, it's another slap on the wrist. It's like the NFL said, hey, Dan, for the 80th time, don't do this anymore or we're really going to come down hard on you. He goes, okay. And so you're going to take away day-to-day operations. BFD from that standpoint when it comes to Dan Snyder and the National Football League. When you are well-liked among the owners, and all owners are well-liked in the National Football League, Keyshawn, you're right. They are going to protect the shield. They're going to protect each other from this standpoint. But it seems time and time again, they're always protecting this guy, specifically this guy. Whatever power stroke he has in the National Football League, they just let him get away with stuff time and time and time again. Finding him $10 million, once again, the NFL is letting everybody know when it comes to sexual misconduct or treatment of women, we don't care. We'll just find $10 million, and like you said, Keyshawn, who'll just write it off. But this is the same NFL organization that when somebody does something a lot worse, as an owner than Dan Snyder, they go whatever. When it comes to players, it could be something very minute, and they want to kick them out of the league. Ask Colin Kaepernick about that from that standpoint. They made him a pariah in the National Football League, but yet Dan Snyder looked the other way when this cesspool was going on and a $10 million fine. The NFL stands for not for long, unless you're Dan Snyder, and they're going to protect their own when it comes to owners in the National Football League.
$10 million. That's enough money to fill up his gas tank on his yacht for the summer.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned it is pocket change to Dan Snyder. And Key, you mentioned that because there is the ability to donate this money, it's not even actually a fine because you can write that off and really it doesn't even come to $10 million. The league has already said that the money will be used for, quote, to support organizations committed to character education, anti-bullying, healthy relationships, and related topics. So none of it really makes sense. It very, very been tweeting, hey, NCAA, since you have now admitted that college athletes are professional, how about riding past wrongs and reinstating the records of Reggie Bush, the Fab Five, and countless others you mistreated over the phony concept of amateurism? It was unfair then and clearly so now. Okay, Keyshawn, self-proclaimed what would have been the highest paid player in college sports with this ruling having taken place years and years before. I want to ask you, should Reggie Bush get his Heisman back?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if Reggie would have took my advice to begin with, this would have been a duplicate Heisman because I told Reggie at the time they asked it back, I said, man, give him the Heisman back, chop it up in a million damn pieces, put it in a box and send it to him. But yes, he absolutely 100% should. We all saw with our own damn eyes that Reggie Bush was a dominant football player. Anything that they claimed went on off the field certainly did contribute to what we saw on the field. On the football field is why he won the Heisman, not based on something that someone said he got in extra benefits. That's not why he won the Heisman. He won because he broke records. He won because he was the most electrifying, dominant football player at that time that we've seen. So he deserves it 100%. In USC, my university, my athletic department, to get involved and contact the NC2A, the Heisman Trophy Committee, and let them know, send us a new shiny one with Reggie Bush's name on it, period.
I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm going to say no.
Man, what are you? Oh, come on.
Keyshawn,
you're just talking now.
No, well, of course I'm just talking. That's what we do. That's how we make our living, by vat-mouthing. That's what we do from that standpoint, Keyshawn. And I understand the whole situation about how he won the Heisman on the field. I get it. I understand that. But then when does it stop? When are we going to continue to play revisionist history because the NCAA, phony amateurism, like Jay Billis said, and cronyism and all that stuff? Whatever the vagueness is of this whole situation, the fact of the matter is we're having this conversation because of three letters, NIL. If the NIL was not in place, I don't believe we'd be having this groundswell of supporters saying that Reggie Bush should get his Heisman back. Or Reggie Bush wanted to
I always felt, Freddie, they should have never took it from me.
I get it, but I understand that. But this conversation is ramping up even more because of what's happening in 2021. Not what happened back then. Whatever we believe about Reggie Bush, whatever we believe is something improper or proper went on, whatever that is. The fact of the matter is to go back in history and to right some wrong, then when does it end? Then it's not going to end, because I know from somebody else, I'm thinking, well, that point was taken away from me in the game. Why don't you give that back to me? I think it's opening up too much of a Pandora's box that once you go down that slope, then there's no coming back from it, because it's not just a right or wrong here, or wrong was committed, or trying to right that wrong. To me, it's a little bit bigger than that. That's why the NIL's in place, because we couldn't do that back then. We couldn't do that for the Keyshawn Johnsons of the world. We couldn't do that for other people. But we're trying to do it now and go back in the past, and I don't think you can do that when it comes to Reggie Bush getting his Heisman back.
But, Freddie, it's a case-by-case basis. You're talking about somebody wants a point back because of this.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to get a record back because of that. We're talking about taking a piece of hardware away from an individual that performed on the field. Off the field stuff had nothing to do with this. Nothing at all. Not one thing at all. If you wanted to punish Reggie Bush for off the field behavior or whatever you want to call it, that's fine. This award is about being on the field. You don't get an award for having the most endorsements as a college athlete. You don't get a reward for having made the most money off the field as a college athlete. You get this award because you performed at the highest level of anybody at the point in time in which you played against or during that time period. That's how you win the Heisman.
Keyshawn,